Show, you're going to love my podcast, War Raw. Each podcast, I present my top 10 most outrageous, salacious, and controversial stories of the week. I break down the best of the best raw truth stories for conservatives, libertarians, patriots, taxpayers, Trumpers, and deplorables. Anyone who appreciates God, guns, gold, and tax cuts will stand up and cheer for War Raw. Check out this week's War Raw podcast right now. It's available to download at iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you listen to podcasts. War Raw. War Raw.
Voters in Georgia give the thumbs down to a referendum.
A Camden County, Georgia plan to build a rocket launch pad for sending satellites into space got rejected by a large number of voters Tuesday in a referendum forced by opponents. They feared the project would pose safety and environmental risks that outweighed any profits. Camden County officials, who spent a decade and $10.3 million pursuing the spaceport, seemed determined to push on in court. From the West Coast, USA Radio News Bureau, I'm Lance Pry.
The Biden administration is reviewing their energy policies, like approving new permits to drill for oil on public lands. They're facing backlash over rising oil and gas prices. Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio is claiming the administration has their hands tied by progressive Democrats on Fox News.
The problem the administration has is they know the answer to this question. They know what the right decision is, but they can't make it because it means going to war with a radical left, and they don't want to do it. And because they're committed to the Green New Deal.
Those critics are also calling on the Biden administration to allow construction on the Keystone XL pipeline to resume, but the administration argues it would take a long time for the pipeline to start up. The Indianapolis Colts are trading quarterback Carson Wentz to the Washington Commanders. Multiple reports say Wentz is heading to the Commanders for a package of draft picks that include 2 third-round picks. For USA Radio News, I'm Tim Berg.
The views and opinions of the following show do not reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
Welcome to the Common Sense Conservatives, a political discussion group about current events and other government-related matters every Wednesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Right here on WSMN 1590 AM, WSMN 95.3 FM, and streaming live on wsmn.live. Making sense of the inverted reality we are subject to every day, the Common Sense Conservatives are here to help bring you back to reality. Now, your hosts, Chris Wyatt, Todd McKinley, and John Grosvenor.
Hey, folks, welcome back to the Common Sense Conservatives. Once again, it's Wednesday, and it's time for a little bit of sense of reality here about what's happening in the world and around the country. We have a special guest tonight, and none other than Phil Rizzo, who's running for Congress in New Jersey. We'll get to Phil in just a moment. But my co-hosts are Todd McKinley in Tennessee and John Grosvenor there in the studio in Nashua, New Hampshire. But before we go any further, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that apparently Carson Wentz is leaving the Colts to go to the Redskins. Oh, I'm sorry, the Washington Commanders. I confused. Yeah, going to the Washington Commanders. And also, I'm still stuck on that Balance of Nature commercial there. He said he went to piddle in the garage. I don't know about you all, but piddle means something different than, tripping around in the garage when I hear it. I mean, Todd, how's it going in Tennessee?
Oh, good, sir. How are you up there in PA?
Older and feeling good about life. Right. John, Nashua.
Our guest tonight.
Yeah, no, you're gonna enjoy that. You're going to enjoy our guest a lot. Go ahead, John.
Oh, yeah, everything's good over here in Nashua, New Hampshire. You know how it goes. Would you like the news now, or would you like to wait later?
Hey, if you got it saves me from asking.
Is this trucking industry news?
No. Well, I figure you might want to get that in the second hour if you wish to talk about that. I don't know.
Okay, go ahead, John. Let's break it to us. Okay, hold on. Wait. What did Joe do? Go ahead.
What did Joe do? Well, we all know. U.S. Senators John Carter, Maggie Hassan, Bill Hagerty, and Angus King introduced the Stop Russian Government and Oligarchs from Limiting Democracy, known as the Stop Russia Gold Act. Quote from Maggie Hassan: with Russia's economy in free fall, we need to make sure that Putin can't circumvent our sanctions. This bipartisan bill closes a critical loophole that allows Russia to sell off its gold reserves to prop up its economy. The U.S. and our allies must be steadfast in standing up to Russia aggression and ensure that we block any escape hatch Putin has in getting around the full weight of our sanctions. Now, I'm kind of confused about that because how do you stop somebody from selling gold to, say, like China or Iran?
You don't.
You don't.
It doesn't work that way. But hey, it's Washington's not the most clued in place. But hey, listen, we've got a gentleman tonight who is clued in, and with any good fortune on his behalf, he'll be sitting down there in that bizarre building, not too far away. defended by the National Guard from the threats from truckers who aren't even leaving the Beltway. But we'll go on from there. Ladies and gentlemen, it's our guest tonight for New Jersey's 7th Congressional District, if I got that correct, Phil Rizzo. How are you, Phil?
I am doing well. Hope everybody's doing well tonight. John, I see you've got just a little bit more snow on the ground there than we have in New Jersey.
Yeah, we're getting our fair share of March snow tonight. I hear we're supposed to get some more Saturday, I think, but you can never trust the weather. You know how it goes. They tell you one thing, and they'll do a total opposite.
John, that's climate change. Come on, man, get with religion. You got to be one of the faithful disciples here. It's climate change.
I stopped listening to fairy tales when I was a kid. Now, Chris.
Well, there you go. But speaking of that, I think I was right on the snow line, because as I was watching the truckers briefing this morning in Hagerstown for the People's Convoy, the drivers out there listening about what they're going to do, they decided not to go out because of the nasty weather today and not cause any accidents, which is prudent of them. But it was raining there, and I looked out the window and I had snow falling. So I guess Phil, I might be just you and I are right on that snow line for today. But Phil and I met at CPAC. That's a Conservative Political Action Convention down in Orlando, which I don't know about you, Phil, but I thought it rocked. Any thoughts on that before we get to your candidacy?
I thought it was great. I always enjoy being there. This is my second time being at CPAC. When I was in Dallas in July, it was right on the heels of my gubernatorial campaign. And so as a non-politician running a statewide race, coming in second place, I was sort of on this political honeymoon. People wanted to hear the story. Who is this conservative that jumped in a statewide race? It was really great to tell our story. But now that I'm in the middle of campaigning for Congress, CPAC was a little bit of work this time. I was campaigning and doing media and talking with donors. So it was a little bit more work than last time, but obviously a fantastic conference.
Well, Phil, our meeting was truly a water cooler moment, so to speak, the story from offices. But I was outside behind the broadcasting row, outside the main conference room. Now, most of my guests that I had on my program and some of the ones coming in here, Todd was able to arrange through his connections, and we're very grateful for that. John and I were down there, and we were able to get a lot of candidates interviewed. But Todd, didn't know about you. You just maybe did know about you, but I went to get some water, and this gentleman was standing next to the water cooler, but not really in front of it. And I just was being polite. And I said, "Pardon me, I just want to get some water." He goes, "Oh no, you're fine." And it's as its nature. I see that Phil is a very engaging person, and as I learned more about him, I learned he's a pastor. And I could see why, but I also tend to engage people. We just had a polite conversation, and I asked him if he was interested in coming on the program, and we did an interview, and I think it was one of the best interviews and most informative. Lots of energy, lots of drive. Phil, you're going to run for Congress, but you put a heck of a showing in there for governor. I mean, you mentioned coming in second. I think we were only in the campaign for about 5 months or thereabouts, if I'm correct about that, and you still came in second. And, the genius there, the Mr. put him in a nursing home, Murphy there, he almost lost, but somehow New Jersey residents still voted him in. But have you learned something from that campaign as a political neophyte that you now bring to this campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously having a statewide campaign under my belt, I'm obviously much more comfortable now on the campaign trail. I know my message is the right message. I believe I said on our interview, there's a Bible verse as a pastor. It's written to pastors. It says, "Preach the word in season and out of season." And basically what that means is just tell it like it is. Sometimes people are going to want to hear it, and sometimes they're not. And as a pastor for a decade, I became very comfortable with that. And on the political trail, we just said it like it was. We don't poll before messaging. I know what people are talking about. I know the issues that families are having. I have a real estate business. I was pastoring for a decade. I'm raising 4 teenagers with my wife here in New Jersey. We have a pretty good pulse on families, and we ran a straight New Jersey family campaign. It was a populist campaign, but I became very comfortable with our message. Speaking in front of people was not the issue, but we don't have political talk, right? We don't have that political speech down. We just say like it is. We're willing to call things out when we see them, and people responded. So second time around, obviously we have a campaign structure now. I learned that the hard way. We sort of built an airplane mid-flight first time around. So we've got things in order as we launch our campaign. And I have a lot of confidence that our message is the right message, and people are responding to it from both sides of the aisle, because it's what every New Jersey family is dealing with.
Well, Phil, we'll get to that message here in just a moment. And I want to get Todd and get a chance to get a question for you here. But before we do, I think I would be remiss if I didn't point this out. How do you possibly think you can win in a state like New Jersey with, I don't know, an Italian name? There's so few Italians in New Jersey. I mean, that's got to be a disadvantage for you there.
well, the nominee for governor was Chitterelli, and the runner was Rizzo. So we're not afraid to have meet and greets over pasta or pizza. We're very comfortable there as well.
Todd, you want to get in there?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, looking at the 7th district, you see that going back for many years, it's been a historically Republican district, with the exception of Malinowski, who just recently won the seat there. And I think just won by 1.2% in his last election, which is about 5,300 votes. It's a very doable district, flipping it back to Republican. How well did you do as a gubernatorial candidate in that district? And at the same time, what's your message in that district to be able to flip it back to Republican?
Well, it was always a red district, as you mentioned. It was held by a Republican, and it sort of the pendulum swung at that Trump midterm, which is very normal. Right. The problem is Malinowski held. He held that seat in 2020, and I believe it's because the NJGOP sort of just finds, who's up next. It's your turn, right. And they just roll out whoever stood in line long enough. And so he lost. I mean, he lost. It was a close race because it's red. But right. If you can't win with a Republican in a red district after that pendulum swing, then obviously something's wrong. So what the NJGOP did in its infinite wisdom, it decided to retread the same reel and run it out there again. And so I've got a primary against the guy who lost to Malinowski, who's not a conservative. I would submit he's not even a Republican. So our messaging is going to be clear. It's a red district. With redistricting that just came down, I believe it became more in my favor as a right lane conservative, a former pastor. It is our base, and we're going to just stay on message. But my primary competitor, he's never really had a primary. He has not been challenged for the June primary before. He always goes straight to the general, and we're going to challenge him. We're going to challenge him big time, and he's got his hands full with our campaign.
Absolutely. And are you finding it hard to go against maybe the GOP establishment within the district or the state, or are they kind of staying on the sidelines for the moment?
No, they're fully engaged. They're opposing us at every turn. My GOP competitor, he's sort of the prince of the party. He's up next, and they will do everything they can to insulate him and to push him through June. But grassroots is bigger than the establishment. There's more moms and dads and business owners and truck drivers and plumbers and electricians than there are elected officials. So we outnumber them probably 100 to 1, if not more. And if people will realize we cannot just take what the establishment gives us in November, we have to engage in the primary. We turn out our primary base, and I believe we win this thing in June pretty comfortably.
Amen. Yes, sir. Colonel?
No, I was going to ask if you want to mention, I don't know if there's still 7 in the race, but it looked like there were 7 Republicans running for that in that primary. And I'm at a loss at which of those guys is your biggest competition. Do you want to mention, or do you want,
sure.
Don't want to give it free?
It's Tom Kane Jr. His father's the former governor of New Jersey.
Right.
So
I thought that sounded familiar.
Yeah, that's a familiar name. Yeah.
New Jersey ties. They've got deep Washington, D.C. ties. But, we don't believe in birthright governance, right? We don't believe in political dynasties. So we are going to challenge him as the people's candidate. And like I said, he has not been exposed for his voting record. He never won his legislator seat in the New Jersey Assembly. He was appointed. And then from there, he never won his New Jersey Senate seat. He was appointed. So he's sort of a political trust fund baby. And we're looking to, smack him around between now and June 7th.
Well, I'll be appointed to Congress. I'll take that. Anybody want to sign me?
Sure, all
That's a
day
lot
long.
easier. You stay right out of the swamp. Speaking of which, politics can be pretty nasty. I don't know what Jersey politics are like. I mean, I've watched The Sopranos, but I don't think that's real life, as far as I know. But seriously, there's a lot of mudslinging goes on. I did a little, there's been some hit jobs against candidates. A couple people taking a few digs at you. How do you stay above that? I mean, as a person of faith, I'm sure that you probably live by the golden rule, would be my guess, and treat others as you want to be treated. But politics isn't like that. It's a tough thing. You put yourself out there, and looking at your family, I'm guessing that they're big supporters of yours and behind you in this. But hopefully that is not something that affects their lives. And I don't know if there's been any mudslinging. I haven't seen any in this. I was referring to the previous campaigners, a little bit of that. But how do you deal with that? Is this something you just take in stride and keep driving on?
Yeah, my children are older. They're 19, 18, 17, and 14. They can read. They're on social media. They see all the hits. But the good thing is they also know the truth. So these things sort of fire them up. I got 3 sons, and it's interesting around here. We sort of have, I'm raising 3 alpha males, and so that's a lot of fun around here. And so they've got dad's back. They're fine. My wife and my daughter, they understand it. They've been through this once already. It's fun and it's manageable when you have the truth on your side. And so as a 3rd generation real estate developer, as a pastor for the last 10 years and a Christian for 20, my life for the most part is pretty boring. We do have some good accomplishments, but I don't ever have to worry about waking up in the morning and finding some hit piece about illegitimate children or mistresses or anything crazy like that. Most of the hit pieces are just that. They're mudslinging, and we're pretty much above that, and we enjoy it. It's not something that has really deterred us too much.
Well, Phil, before I give John a chance to jump in here, before Todd asked him a question about politics in New Hampshire, we'll save that for the second hour.
Right.
But he does that to him on every show. But I used to catch John unprepared, but I think John's all ready for it every show now. But Phil, do you ever wake up in the morning and go, my goodness, I'm a very fortunate man. I've won the lottery. Your family's lovely. It looks like you've got a wonderful family there. You've got to, look, I'm not playing fanboy. I'm not playing puff piece here. Folks, go check out his website. He's got a lovely family there. Look like a wonderful bunch of kids and a spouse there. Do you just feel like you've just, you've won the lottery?
Absolutely. My wife, as I think about it, she's been amazing. When we met, when we got engaged, she married a real estate developer. And,
oh my goodness.
and that's what she signed up for. Her father and her brother, they're in construction. And so she marries this guy with a real estate development family. And 10 years into our marriage, I enter the ministry. She turns into a pastor's wife and a church pianist. And she did it with a smile on her face and was a great mentor to the ladies in our church. And now recently, she's willing to follow me. So absolutely, I am blessed to have my wife's support. That is absolutely key, to have my wife stand by me through all of this. And my kids think it's cool, running a statewide race on conservative platform. It was sort of like the ministry. We got to talk to lots of people about conservative things. So my kids have sort of been built for this. And so it's been phenomenal doing business together, doing ministry together, and now running for office together.
That's pretty amazing. Hey, folks, you're listening to the Common Sense Conservatives on WSMN, and you can find us on the webs. Yeah, the webs, the Facebook and on YouTube. But we're on the radio on WSMN 1590 AM and 95.3 FM. Catch us every Wednesday from 7 to 9 p.m. where we bring common sense to political discussions. It's really sounding like a Jersey story, and I'm about to give John a chance to hop in there. But, construction, real estate, Italians. It's a Jersey story, man. I'm telling you. That's what we got going on here. This guy's name's Rizzo. Hey, not Rizzuto, Rizzo. Hey, John, you're up, buddy.
All right. Hey, Phil, I really kind of looking at your platform here and liking it. I love this part here. Take back our freedoms, man. You're plucking at my heartstrings. You really are. Starting out with our rights come from God. It's nice to hear somebody recognizing that instead of, like Joe Biden saying something about you're born with your rights, but you yield them back to the government. It just doesn't make sense to me. But Yeah, I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit, because in here you mentioned medical freedoms, and Constitution really doesn't establish medical freedoms, but yet we all feel like we have a constitutional right to choose our own medical freedoms. And I'm wondering how you like to go about that, and are you planning on, if you get in and you get this going, you get it shaken and everything, and are you going to be able to amend this to our U.S. Constitution so it's actual civil liberty and not just some statutory right?
Yeah, I mean, the people that are watching, they wouldn't know just from sort of this interview. But when I was 4 years old in 1980, I had a home accident in the basement of our house where a support column fell down and it hit my right arm and brought my arm down to the concrete floor and crushed the bone and the artery. And so if that accident happened in 2022, medical science would have turned out with a different outcome. But in 1980, it left me at 4 years old as an amputee. And so I've had my whole life as an amputee at the elbow. And so with that, I've just been a fighter, an overcomer, from learning to tie my shoes and, button a shirt. I just have to outwork people. And so that's sort of in my DNA. It's sort of in my life story to not just accept what's handed to me. We have to overcome, we have to fight, we have to battle. And so you sort of fast forward through the school age years. I played baseball into high school. I played 4 years of high school football. I rejected some football offers to play in college, to go to Villanova University, to get my business degree and enter our family business. And so life was not handed to me on a silver platter. And so I sort of take what's given to me, I look at it, and then most times I just say no. And under Phil Murphy's lockdowns, as a business owner and as a pastor and as a family man, I knew that his lockdown was going to affect my life. And so I read that original executive order that locked down our state. And as I read it, I started shaking my head no. Like, no. According to Phil Murphy, our ministry and the entire faith community of New Jersey was to be bolted shut, non-essential. And simply because the sign over our front door said City Baptist Church. But according to Phil Murphy, we would have been open for business as usual if we took that sign down and replaced it with City Liquors. And so that was something else that was sort of pushed at me as a leader in my community. And I just said no. We never closed our church. We never skipped an in-person service. We never mandated masks. We never socially distanced in our church. We never limited capacity and said, oh, sorry, we're only letting 15 people in today. No, we answer to God, not the governor. And so our rights, we know they come from God. As a minister, the First Amendment, we're the first line of the First Amendment for a reason. And so we just believe that people have the right to live in freedom. The Constitution is a chain and an anchor to hold the government to the bottom of the ocean. It's to bind the government so people can live free. That is so out of whack in 2020 and everything that we dealt with. People thought, well, the government said, the governor said, Fauci said. Listen, I'm faith over Fauci and I'm God over governor. So that wasn't going to happen on my watch. But, people are willing to sort of just accept what they're given. And, 24 months in, I think people are ready for a leader to give them something different, to give them the freedoms to close their business if they want to, and to keep it wide open if they want to. We've got to empower people to live their lives as they see it. And, that's not politically, expedient 24 months ago, but we said it from day one. And you know what? Hindsight, we were right. When Phil Murphy closed our state, he started opening the restaurants slowly but surely. And at one point, he allowed these business owners who put it all on the line to open their restaurants to 35%. My GOP competitor in the governor's race came out and said, Phil Murphy, this is unacceptable. These restaurants should be allowed to be opened to 50%. Well, I came out with a video and said, you're both wrong, 100%. And if an entrepreneur wants to put half their tables in the back, great. but we need to give the power back to the people. So that's sort of how I live my life, not just accepting what's been given to me. And I want to empower families to live the same way.
So you feel like it's the people should make their own choices for their own well-being. If they want to wear a mask, they can wear a mask. You can wear a mask anytime you want to protect yourself in public, but don't expect somebody else should have to wear a mask. You're responsible for your health as well as everybody else is for theirs.
Absolutely. Those are decisions that are made between an individual and their doctor. And it's funny with this whole mandating of a mask thing. I was kept out of a deli one day over a cup of coffee. And I had been in there a few times, and the guy was finally like, you know what? You're not coming in because you never wear a mask. And so, you know what? You're not coming in. I said, well, you're really violating sort of my rights to come in and get a cup of coffee. He said, no, that's the law. I said, that's not a law. It's an executive order.
Exactly.
So we sort of went back and forth. And after a few minutes, he said, you know what? This is my place of business. I'll do whatever I want. I could either let people in or not let them in. It's my house, my rules sort of thing. I said, a mask is a medical device. Are you telling me I can't come in unless I wear my prosthetic? And the guy was like, oh, that's different. I said, not for me, it's not. For you, it is. Maybe you're pushing a medical device on people to buy a cup of coffee. And after a few more minutes, he ultimately let me in. But again, I don't just eat the narrative that's fed to us. We got to push back. The radical left is playing hardball, and Republicans, we're playing wiffle ball. Enough is enough with that mushy middle. We got to get people that are dead serious and understand that we're about to lose our nation. We're going to lose our nation in November if we don't make a clean sweep and this red wave actually happens. That's why I'm running. I mean, we're in a red district. There's a red wave coming. We would be foolish in New Jersey to flip that blue seat light blue. It is time for red-blooded Americans, conservative fighters to stand up.
So now you just open up a door for executive powers, or what they call it. Yeah, executive powers, or emergency powers. And I was wondering, if you would mind elaborating on that a little bit, because that's what the executive orders were about, right? Is they were exercising emergency powers as governors and like Joe Biden did as president.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if there's a real emergency, let's have a conversation about it. But like I said, when I read the executive order and City Baptist was to be closed, but City Liquors was going to be open, that's not an emergency in my book. Walmart's open, Home Depot's open, and the church is closed. So yeah, I mean, if there's a legitimate emergency, we'll talk about it when it arrives. But certainly this madness over the last 24 months certainly wasn't that.
Absolutely. Chris, we do have a listener question.
Sure.
Do you mind, Phil? TJ's asking about critical race theory. And I know you're high on academics.
Yeah, critical race theory is it's racism repackaged, and I'm trying to change the name of it from critical race theory to critical hate theory, because that's what it is. It's teaching white kids to hate themselves simply because they're white. Another detail that people may not know simply watching the show is, we have 4 children. 3 of our children, the 3 oldest, are biological, and our youngest is adopted from San Antonio, Texas, and his biological father is Mexican. So according to critical race theory in my home, in the Rizzo household, when I go to kiss my kids goodnight, I have to tell my 3 oldest that they are oppressors, that they ought to feel guilty about being white. And then I've got to go to my youngest son and say, you know what? You're really a victim because of the pigment of your skin. You're what they call brown, and your siblings and mom and dad, we've been holding you down because of the pigment of your skin. And so critical race theory is evil at its core. It affects me personally as somebody that has a family with an adopted child whose biological father is Mexican. And so we are opposing critical race theory. And it's interesting that would be the question that's asked. My GOP opponent, Kane Jr., he sits on the Amistad Commission in New Jersey. He's personally responsible for putting critical race theory in New Jersey schools. Again, he's been flying under the radar far too long, but we're going to expose him. And critical race theory is just something else to divide the next generation.
No, it's absolutely the case, and Phil, it's actually more insidious than that. I mean, racism in itself is abhorrent. I mean, if you make a decision about someone and you take action or make a decision for or against them based on their skin pigmentation, I mean, that's just vile. But teaching a child to hate themselves or that they're guilty or complicit in something that has nothing to do with their existence is just it's really it's a crime against humanity, I would argue.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, when you have children in a classroom setting that start lying about their life because the guilt walk that they put them through, if you live in a house where mom and dad both live under the same roof, take a step forward. If you have 2 TVs in your house, take a step forward. If mom and dad have a college degree, take a step forward. If you could find Band-Aids that match your skin color in the pharmacy, take a step forward. When you have kids that start lying and stop taking steps forward, you're teaching them to be guilty about the life that they were born in. No child asked for the life that they were born into. And we have to deal with what we have. Again, I had to deal with what I was dealt. Nobody asked for a lolly column to fall down when I was 4 years old, but you have to deal with it. You man up and you fight through whatever it is that you're dealing with to be successful and get wherever you want. In America, you can get wherever you want, regardless of where you started, what color your skin is, how many fingers you have. I mean, we can succeed in America. We just got to get people out of the way that make them feel guilty about their starting point.
Absolutely. It's whoever came with that mentally deficient concept. I remember hearing about that. I mean, if you are the child of a military service member, privileged, you ever spend, years away from your children, deployed, your life on the line, missing births, missing family deaths, missing key events, having strained marriages, struggling to keep those marriages together, being in remote locations with austere situations. And these idiots consider that privileged. You just want to smack them upside the head. But I will be clear about one thing, Phil, and I need to share this with my co-host because I'm not sure they know this. When I go to CVS or Walgreens and Rite Aid and I'm looking for Band-Aids, I can't find any pink ones that match my skin color. So I'm just putting that up front. But seriously, so Phil, I see you got a kick out of that. But no, but seriously, it's pretty frightening stuff. The Tea Party movement was huge. I'm now, if I paint you wrong, please correct me. I don't want to get this wrong for the record, but I would look at your positions and how you feel, and I would say you're probably someone that would have been sympathetic, or if there was a Tea Party movement strong today, you'd be a Tea Party movement person. Would that be a fair description?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Get the government back, get back to the basics, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and keep government small. I mean, really, the government's supposed to protect our borders and make sure we have, consistent currency. I mean, other than that, get out of the way as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. But the thing about the Tea Party movement, though, and this is where I'm going to throw some criticism out, not at anybody gathered in this conversation, but the Tea Party movement, we were betrayed. Those of us who supported Democrats, Republicans, independents, those who got behind that movement, who were angry and supported that peaceful movement, which wasn't quite demonized like a lot of things have been in recent years. But that Tea Party movement, 139 people in the first time around ran for the House under the Tea Party banner and 9 for the Senate. A lot of them got elected, and they promptly became part of the Uniparty and betrayed us. Phil Rizzo will be able to trust you going to D.C. as a conservative, constitutional conservative. We'll be able to count on that.
Well, as a 45-year-old man now, I know what I believe. I know why I believe it, okay? And I'm not interested really into going to Congress and being there for the next 30, 40 years. I think we need term limits. I think about 95% of our problems with the House and the Senate go away with term limits. That's number one. And I think the balance of our problems go away that when your term is up and you go back to being a regular civilian, you live under the laws you put in place. You don't get this lifetime health care. You don't get this lifetime anything. You go serve your country and then you go back to doing whatever you were doing. And you live under the laws that you just passed for everybody else. I think term limits and no lifetime sort of setup after elected office holder, you're gonna start weeding out those opportunists, right? There's a reason why congressional seats are so sought after. It pays pretty well. You're there for 4 years, and then you got lifetime benefits, after that. So I'm not interested in doing anything like that. I can't be bought. I can't be sold. I'm not moldable in a political world, which is why the NJGOP is fighting me so hard. The perfect politician is wet clay. You make them a bowl, you make them a vase, you make them a jewelry holder, whatever you need, when you need it, you just make them that. That's never been my style in life, and I'm certainly not going to change now.
Well, Todd, Phil's got a good point there. It's a good gig if you can get it. A couple terms in Congress, you get this lifetime benefit. You don't get shot at. I suppose you could cower in the tunnel between the Rayburn building and Congress.
Sure.
And you were under threat on January 6th. I mean, I don't know, somebody who's a former bartender, But anyway, you really don't face anything. Whereas we had to sacrifice a lot and lost comrades on the battlefield, more than in many cases, many of our comrades. And we gave up a lot of blood and treasure only to retire and then have to pay for our insurance to get the health care. So, isn't that ironic?
Yeah. Only to be attacked by some of the establishment GOP members. I experienced here in Tennessee on a quasi-regular basis. Not all, mind you, but there are those elements within the GOP, the establishment, that come after me on a regular basis, and so I know what you're saying.
Well, Todd, it's you made a run for Congress there, so you know what the pit can be like in this sort of thing. So, any tips or advice for Phil as he runs for this office? I mean, he's facing somebody that the party just loves because he is that clay that can be molded.
Well, he kind of talked about it a minute ago when he talked about education, and I was going to bring up the quote unquote "Don't Say Gay" bill in Florida, which that's not what it's called.
I was going to save that for the next hour, but go ahead if you got it up there.
But now the Republicans, are yet again, and I was listening to some conservative radio shows yesterday, are on defensive yet again. Instead of being out there on the offensive or out there actually selling the bill, talking about what's in it, now they're defending every allegation from the left. And my thought is how do you change that? How do you change the mindset in Washington, D.C. to get away from the defensiveness, to get out there and selling what your ideas are instead of playing defense all the time from whatever the left's throwing at you, which most of the time is nonsense? How do you change Washington, D.C. for the better in that respect?
I think there's a new breed of politicians en route, people that are just sick and tired of watching the Republicans flip-flop and change. Like I said, I don't ever eat the narrative that's given me. I sort of reject it, and I come forward as a football player. And anybody who ever watched football, you're winning by 5 points, and it's the fourth quarter, and you go in prevent defense. What happens? You end up losing. They say it's the prevent defense. It prevents you from winning. We cannot win by playing defense. We need to be on offense. We need to lean into every accusation. And again, if you're standing on the right side of history, you don't have to wiggle and worm. You just say, yeah, I'm a sane human being who's on the right side of history, and I'm doubling down on it. And so I think there's those sort of people coming into the political world because they're sick and tired of electing people that say one thing and then do another. People are starting to come off the sidelines and saying, you know what, if we can't find somebody to do it for us, I'll do it myself. And I'm guilty of that. That is me. I came off the sidelines. I was politically paying attention and walking around the house complaining about it. And I was tired of complaining about it. So I figured I'd throw my hat in the ring and say enough is enough. And so I think we've got a movement coming of people that are just not going to backpedal. And we need to understand this is warfare. We are in a battle for the soul of our nation. And one of us is going away. We're either going to win and we're going to push out the mushy middle Republican and take control, or we're going to let them at the helm and the radical left will steamroll them, and then we're in trouble. So it's a net zero.
I love the answers.
Well, it's sometimes, Phil, I kind of feel like, I don't know, I've got a couple days on you, not too many days on you there, but got a couple days on you. But sometimes I feel like, I don't know, maybe we were all kind of asleep at the wheel I mean, I've told people this story many times. For me, I mean, sure, it started, you could pick a point in history, but for me, as a young man growing up, it all seemed to start with the 1980s when I saw an assault on evangelicals in this country by the media and by academia. And they would attack Jerry Falwell as some sort of evil, a charlatan and things like that. And of course, you had people like Jim and Tammy Faye that didn't help that's because they were charlatans. But the point is that they went after evangelical Christians first. And when it became fashionable and okay to get away with attack evangelicals, they spread to Christians in general. Next thing you know, we're having people make these ludicrous arguments that having a creche in a public square is somehow a crime. You can't have a nativity scene when this country is founded on Judeo-Christian principles. And there's nothing in the Constitution that prohibits us from celebrating our faith, whether we're Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, or Christians, in the public space. It's there for us to use as long as we do it in a reasonable fashion. And it went from there to just demonizing different groups in America. We've got to the stage where today, where I almost feel like a couple of generations of us either were sleepwalking as the radical left grabbed a hold of all our institutions, academia, and tech, corporate boards now. And I almost feel like a little guilty, Phil, that we've got an obligation to right this ship because it's listing badly. We're all going to be serfs. Do you think that my perception of this is off the mark, or do you agree with me?
No, I think you're right on. I believe the reason why they went after the evangelicals and Christians as a whole is, number one, our message is the opposite of their message. Number one, it's opposite. So if they could start breaking us up and dividing us and silencing us, they reduce, they minimize, or possibly their effort is to eliminate the opposition. So that is within the faith community. Then you've got the idea of people assembling together where you can exchange ideas, where you can talk about it, where we're talking right now, we're brainstorming ideas. Who needs to run? Who do we need to overthrow? The mushy middle, radical left. I mean, communication is key in order to stay strong. So no, I don't think it was an accident. I've never accused the left of being stupid. The left is evil, but they are not stupid. And they are strategic. And in a lot of ways, they're smarter than us with their words. And also they play the long game, right? Conservatives, we show up every other November or every fourth November, and we think we want our guy or girl to get in. The left has played the long ball, and we are reaping now them playing the long ball and us trying to, snipe an election every 2 or 4 years,
right?
When we had a candidate that we liked. And so I think people are waking up to that fact. We had great gains in New Jersey from the bottom up. Hundreds of school board seats were won by conservative grassroots. Dozens of town council seats were won. Mayor races were won. As you get closer to the top of the ticket, we were getting less and less gains. Why? Well, because that's where the establishment has its stranglehold. So we're a bottom-up government anyway, so we might as well ride that wave and push up from the bottom. And really, that's what's going to break that stranglehold. But yeah, they attacked us deliberately to silence our voices because we're an opposing voice to their agenda.
Well, speaking of attacking, this is something I found particularly repulsive, and I need to frame this so that nobody misinterprets it, because those who know me quite well. I treat everybody the same. If they're a jerk, they get treated like a jerk. If they're a good person, they get treated like a good person. I don't care if your skin pigmentation, your ethnicity, or your religious faith. But so that's why I want to frame this very quickly. But I found this particularly repulsive during this pandemic, whatever we're calling it, during the past couple of years here. If you look just to the east of you in New York City, New York City, that's a pace, get some of that picante sauce, but New York City. But if you look at New York City, we saw instances where the lunatic mayor, who's no longer mayor, he's been replaced by one almost as bad, but the lunatic mayor there, who couldn't even use his last name because he's ashamed of the fact he had a Germanic surname, Wilhelm. Right. But anyway, his city government would attack Jewish residents of the city and deny them opportunities to go to faith while looking the other way and Muslims attending mosque. Now, Muslims should be allowed to attend mosque, Jews should be allowed to attend synagogue, and Christians should be allowed to go to church if they like. And whatever Wiccans, wherever they go, they should be allowed to do it too.
The woods, maybe.
Maybe I don't know where they go.
I don't know.
I don't mean to insult Wiccans.
No,
It's a
of course
legitimate
not.
thing, but
Yeah,
I don't know where they congregate. So, but whatever the case is, my point here, Phil, is the assault on faith and the selective assault on faith. Once again, Jews were being targeted in New York, and others weren't necessarily. Now we see in the People's Fascist Republic or Confederacy of Canada under little juicy Justy Trudeau there, we see that government assaulting Arthur Pawlowski, a Polish immigrant, a pastor, because he embarrassed the police who walked into his church, interrupted his church service without a warrant.
Right.
And when he embarrassed them, he became public enemy number one. And look at how they've tried to destroy his life, chasing him, hounding him endlessly, locking him up, making perp walks out of him. Are you at all disturbed by what happened in New York, what's happened in some localities in the States, and what's happened in Canada to people of faith? I mean, and where are the leaders in the faith communities? You're not standing up. When we see people make complaints about racial disparity, I think that Al Sharpton was a reverend. He got up and spoke loudly. I'm not going to comment on his religious credentials, but my point is that where are the leaders of faith in times of crises? Isn't it normally leaders of faith who help guide their flocks and help stand up for them? Or did I miss that part of societal development?
Again, we have been eating a narrative, pastors and listen, as a pastor for a decade, I mean, I'm talking about some of my friends. They're afraid to deal with political issues from the pulpit. Listen, you cannot separate God and government from the scriptures. There's hardly a book in the Bible where the man of God and the man of government did not intersect, but they were fed this lie that if you mention politics from your pulpit, you're going to lose your tax exempt status. That's just a lie. We're not even tax exempt by the IRS. We're tax immune by the Constitution. But we have such a weak sort of faith. We've allowed God to be taken out of our schools. We navigate and are willing to have conversations about taking God off of our money and one nation under God out of our pledge. I mean, when you're willing to negotiate with lunatics, well, I'm not surprised when the governor says, close your church. You got a bunch of faith leaders that say, okay. And then the governor walks with BLM while citing pastors who actually do have their churches open. And so I think that there has been an awakening. My wife says it around the house all the time. Let the left go crazy. It'll take more time, unfortunately, for more people to see it. But the crazier they go, the more people will see it. So let them go off the rails. More people will wake up. And so my opinion is sort of, well, what's taken so long? Hey, listen, better late than never, but we're down to the wire now. If we do not engage and we do not take control of the House and the Senate and the loonies control Washington, they're going to pass H.R. 1 or they're going to pass H.R. 4 and the federal government's going to take over our elections and we are done. America was going to be a nice 246-year experiment. And we are going to Thelma and Louise right off that cliff. And it will have been a good run, but it will be over if we let them take control. There'll be universal mail-ins. We'll have 15-week long elections. They'll just, they'll do whatever they want. We'll never win another election. So, yeah, again, to the point is, they've attacked the faith community on purpose. And to my dismay, a lot of faith leaders rolled over. Not like anything I ever thought I would see ever in my life.
Well, another part of that too is the hypocrisy of it, Phil. I mean, you've got well, you don't have it, but the Catholics have a pope, a papal leader who sees no difficulty sticking in his nose in our politics, telling us to open our borders and let people pour across and dilute our country and bring us down with people who are bringing a burden to our country rather than being a burden where they come from. And that's not an anti-immigrant stance. For those who know me, you know that's not the case. But he sticks his nose in our politics. He comes to America and he gives sermons in Spanish. This is an English-speaking country. I speak 6 languages, so they can't accuse me of being a bigot there. 3 of them are African, but this is an English-speaking country. Yes, we have a lot of people speak Spanish. We also have a lot of people speak Ukrainian and Russian in Baltimore and New York. So why isn't he speaking that? Well, my point is the Pope comes in here, he gets a free pass. Oh, he's so cool, this Argentinian Pope. Hey, why don't they go to the Pampas fields in Argentina? There's a lot of open space in Argentina. Why doesn't he take the millions on? Meanwhile, we see church congregations in the deep South that complied with this separation and this physical. They sit in their cars in drive-in theaters, and cops came and arrested them. They're not even near anybody else. The biggest danger they faced was when cops walked out of their cruisers to come over and harass them sitting in their cars with their windows up at a drive-in movie theater. It's really frightening. And I don't mean to go on about the faith thing, but of course, you are a pastor, and it is a part of who you are, and it is a part of many Americans. This is a country that has traditionally been one of a large number of people of faith. Usually 85% or more of the people in this country recognize some sort of faith, even if they're not practicing their daily lives. I just think that it's the disdain that's there, the way that the left misuses faith against people is really a frightening prospect, and people in DC need to wake up to that. Oh, your mic's off.
Sorry, we've given up ground, right? So the worst thing you can do is give up ground and let your enemy get position. It's a more difficult fight to unseat the enemy from their stronghold than it is to just fight them off when you have the stronghold. But again, the faith community has been backpedaling for quite a while. Now they've got position on us. Now our fight is going to be much more difficult to unseat them from the position that we've given them. We've yielded it to them. They didn't take it. We willingly gave it to them. And so I've had plenty of conversation with ministry friends over the last 24 months, and we were not on the same page. And I think now we're more on the same page just because they saw the unrelenting push to never let this end. And now it's time for us to step up and fight back.
Well, that's encouraging. Hey, folks, you're listening to WSMN 1590 AM, 95.3 FM. This is the Common Sense Conservatives. I'm Chris in Central Pennsylvania. My co-hosts are Todd McKinley in Tennessee. I started to say Central Tennessee. I got to cut myself every time. Right. And John Grosvenor there in the studio in Nashua, New Hampshire. We're listening and speaking to congressional candidate for New Jersey's 7th Congressional District, Phil Rizzo, who recently made an effort to take a run at governor, and now he's running for Congress for representing that district. So we're running out of time here in this hour, Phil. So I'm going to go around the horn, and I'm going to start with John and give him a chance to get in here if he's got something to ask you or a comment or something before we run at the top of the hour.
Actually, I was sitting there thinking, communication is key. And I feel like a lot of people, when they do get to Congress, what they end up doing is they kind of get this disconnect with their constituents. And I'm wondering, how do you plan on staying in contact with your constituents? How do you plan on communicating them with and keep that connection?
Absolutely. Well, as a former pastor, actually, I'm a people person. I've always been a people person. I am natural born leader. As a captain of my football team, that doesn't qualify me to run for Congress. There's a lot of captains of football teams. I'm just saying, I'm a communicator. I listen. I solve problems. That's true in my business. I'm the guy on the job site that's got to keep the mason and the framer from throwing hammers at each other. I'm a conflict resolution. It's sort of one of my skill sets. I listen to people and I'm genuinely concerned about them. And I said on the campaign trail, and people believe me when I said it, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for you. And so that was part of the message that people really responded to. And so I am not planning on moving to DC. I plan on commuting. I will stay down there. I'm not going to commute every day. It's about 3.5 hours, but I'm not going to stay down there full time. My wife and we drove down there about 4 weeks ago for a 1-hour meeting and came home. I'm okay with that. I plan on being at home in the district with the constituents and with my family. We're not picking up and jetting down to Alexandria. Not that there's anything wrong with Alexandria, but I plan on being in district with the people, listening to them regularly, and then representing them in DC.
Well, we're going to switch over to Todd here, but just a word of advice: you might want to switch to a Tesla at $15 a gallon. Stephen Colbert is getting himself a Tesla. Oh, he's got one already, but that gas is going to eat you alive commuting down to DC there, Phil. Todd, we're almost at the end of the hour. You got a question there for our candidate?
Absolutely. Yeah, great website. It says Phil Rizzo, Take Back Our Congress. And for those that are listening who don't know the website, jerseyrizzo.com, jerseyrizzo.com. Check it out. Support this guy. He's hitting all the right messages here. How do you go down to Washington, D.C., and how do you sit there and push back against the agenda that's being thrown at you every day? And also, how do you fight, or not necessarily fight, but how do you stand up to those within your own party that are going to try to tell you to get in line and go along?
Sure. The way we deal with our own party is we just beat them, right? We're just going to beat them on the ground come June. That is my job as the candidate, to go shake the bushes and turn out the votes. We are bigger than the establishment. And then I'm already making friends down in Washington, D.C. with people that think like me and are conservative like me and are fighting like me. We had the opportunity just last week. We were honored to announce that I got the endorsement from North Carolina Congressman Madison Cawthorn. And Nice. He is in the swamp. He is down there. He is fighting. And his message in his endorsement, he closed his endorsement with this: New Jersey, send me Phil Rizzo. And so he needs help. And when I get there, I'm going to need help. But, where if we can band together, and I plan on joining the Freedom Caucus when I get there, and really get a group of people that are going to represent a solid block of sanity. I don't even want to say conservatism because everybody says that. We are going to run on sanity, common sense, and we're going to represent the people and what they want. Nobody thinks that a dude should be in a swimming match against a girl. Nobody believes that that's right. And we're going to stand up to that madness, and we're not going to give an inch.
I love it. Bring a little Jersey down to the House of Representatives. I love it.
Well, I tell you, we love hearing that common sense you're talking about there, here on the Common Sense Conservatives. So we're going to run out of time here shortly, Phil, and I think you've just made your argument for why you could go down there. But that's interesting. Cawthorn has endorsed you. He's in the fight of his life down there as they try to create a law just to deny him an opportunity to run for Congress. These leftists, these radicals are so desperate. Their narratives have failed on the Rona. Their narratives have failed on everything. And, Joe Biden is rattling sabers and trying to take us into war with a nuclear armed nation. It's just crazy. You get to D.C., you're going to be voting on foreign policy issues, too. You got to be worried about that.
Well, we're working on it with our team right now. And, nobody's sitting me in briefing rooms right now. So I'm concentrating on winning my primary, winning the general, and surrounding myself by really smart people down there in D.C. so I can get a good hold of what's going on. Like I said, conflict resolution is what I've been doing my whole life. I believe I'm specially equipped for it, and we're glad to get involved wherever they need us.
All right, folks, stick with us and catch us in the next hour. That was Phil Rizzo from New Jersey's Congressional District Number 7. See you in the next hour.
WSMN 1590, WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Listen, watch, and stream at wsmn.live.
USA Radio News with Tim Berg.
Vice President Kamala Harris is now in Poland. This comes after the White House said there was a temporary breakdown in communications between Poland and the United States concerning sending fighter jets to Ukraine. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby explains that additional jets for Ukraine could also put NATO forces at risk of being dragged into a bigger conflict with Russia.
The intelligence community has assessed that the transfer of MiG-29s to Ukraine may be mistaken as escalatory and could result in a significant Russian reaction that might increase the prospects of a military escalation with NATO.
U.S. officials are warning that Russia could use chemical weapons in an attack on Ukraine. An official with the Biden administration telling NBC News that the United States is concerned after Russia made a claim that Ukraine was planning a false flag chemical weapon attack. USA Radio News.
Have you or someone you know used heartburn medications Zantac or ranitidine and been diagnosed with cancer? Zantac and ranitidine have been positively linked to cancer. According to the FDA, Zantac and ranitidine contain NDMA, a known cancer-causing agent. NDMA has been positively linked to cancers of the bladder, pancreas, esophagus, liver, and stomach. Even in single doses and in smaller doses over time, NDMA is one of the strongest proven cancer-causing agents. Call 888-960-1233 or go to ZantacMoney.com. You may be entitled to substantial compensation without going to court if you or a loved one have taken these products in the past 10 years and been diagnosed with cancer. Call now to see if you qualify for free. Call 888-960-1233 or visit ZantacMoney.com to get what may be owed to you. You may be entitled to a cash reward. Find out now at ZantacMoney.com or call 888-960-1233 to see if you qualify for free.
A New Orleans airport says former President Donald Trump suffered plane trouble over the weekend. New Orleans Lakefront Airport Director Bruce Martin telling the local paper in New Orleans the former president's flight suffered an engine failure over the Gulf of Mexico. The plane safely landed at Louis Armstrong New Orleans International Airport. A ship that sank over 100 years ago has been located.
The legendary wooden ship Endurance has been found in remarkably good condition, 10,000 feet underwater in the Weddell Sea. That's off the Antarctic coast towards South America, where it sank in 1915. Irish explorer Sir Ernest Shackleton was trying to reach the South Pole, abandoned the Endurance after it became trapped in ice. The ship was crushed by ice and sank 4 miles off its last reported position. From the West Coast, USA Radio News Bureau, I'm Lance Pry.
At the closing bell, the Dow gaining 654 points on Wednesday, and you're listening to USA Radio News.
Hi, I'm Wayne LaRoute. If you like my radio show, you're going to love my podcast, War Raw. Each podcast, I present my top 10 most outrageous, salacious, and controversial stories of the week. I break down the best of the best, raw truth stories for conservatives, libertarians, patriots, taxpayers, Trumpers, and deplorables. Anyone who appreciates God, guns, gold, and tax cuts will stand up and cheer for War Raw. Check out this week's War Raw podcast right now. It's available to download at iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you listen to podcasts. War Raw. War Raw.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is being called a beast by the House Speaker. During her weekly briefing, Nancy Pelosi said she talked on the phone with the Ukrainian president for 45 minutes. She accused Putin of overseeing crimes against humanity. A Maryland man who received a historic pig heart transplant has passed away. From the USA Radio News Washington, D.C. Bureau, John Hunt has the details.
David Bennett, who received a pig heart in January in place of his own failing one, has passed away. It's not clear yet what precisely caused Bennett's death, according to the University of Maryland's Medical Center, where he received the transplant on January 7th and had been recovering since. His condition began deteriorating over the last few days. Bennett was the first patient to ever receive an animal organ genetically modified to prevent rejection in a person. The investigative surgery, though it only added just over 2 months to Bennett's life, informed the field of xenotransplantation, which hopes to solve the human organ shortage.
DC superhero fans will have to wait a bit longer for some highly anticipated films. Warner Brothers announcing The Flash, Black Adams, and Aquaman 2 all have been pushed to 2023. However, fans will get to see the sequel to Shazam nearly 6 months earlier than originally planned, as it now will be released on December 16th. For USA Radio News, I'm Tim Berg.
All right. Hey, folks, welcome back to the Common Sense Conservatives here on 95.3 FM and 1590 AM. WSMN and Colonel, yeah, there he is. The Colonel is back, folks, and I'll let him take the lead here as his night to lead us. But let me say about our guest, amazing. And let me say, we need people like that down in Washington, D.C., not to go along, get along, not the mushy middle, as he said. We need common sense down in Washington, D.C. now more than ever. And not somebody who can just sit there and buy the seat, but somebody who's actually going to go down there and do what they say, somebody who's done it in their lifetime. I love this guy. And Colonel, great job for getting him on the show.
I told you it's a real deal, didn't I? I don't sell you. I don't sell you a bill of goods. Listen, if it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck. It might be a duck.
There he is. Yeah, whenever you said Rizzo, I was harking back to the Jerky Bros. I was like, we some Jersey Rizzo. I'm like, Frank Rizzo.
Phil
my
Rizzo.
goodness.
I
the
was thinking Phil
jerky
Rizzo.
boy.
Oh, that too. Yeah.
Frank
No.
Rizzo.
No,
Jackie
no.
Boys.
No, but no, interesting gentleman. And once again, there was just, the moments in life. I wanted some water. I was thirsty. I was dehydrated from doing interviews, and I leaned in, and he was right there. And then I excused myself, and next, we're talking. He offered me his card, and we did the interview there. And that was one of the most exciting interviews I did when I was down there at CPAC, which, by the way, was brilliant. I know we talked a little bit about last time. But it was absolutely brilliant. And we got a lot more guests coming up, folks, more candidates we met down there in Orlando. John and I talked to a number of people, and we'll get them on the program as they head to their primaries coming up. But best of luck to him as a candidate. Hopefully he does well. We definitely need people down there in D.C. that aren't part of the Uniparty, because it's really a lot of people. Now, I was just double checking on a few pieces of news items there as we were on the news break. And I was looking at International Women's Day. Poor J.K. Rowling has come under assault again because she's standing up for women being attacked by the hateful, vengeful left, calling her anti-trans and all this other nonsense. It's a really sick world some of these people live in. I don't know how they live with themselves. Well, I do, because they're just not genuine people. That's probably what it is.
Right.
So,
the interesting thing is people on the left are so busy trying to stand up for somebody else all the time. They don't live it. They don't know it. And yet they intrude upon their fight. You know what I mean? And half the time they don't even know what they're talking about.
Well, they want to make sure everybody knows who they're standing up for. It's like, you're being put upon, so I'm going to stand up for you. So you just go sit over there because you can't stand up for yourself. So people that are going about their lives, minding their own doggone business, doing the best that they can, all of a sudden are being put in a box saying, hey, you don't come out of this box because I'm going to be fighting for you over here. It's like, leave them alone. Don't put them in the box. So that's what the Democrats want to do. But then they want to call everybody else racist or sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, whatever the case may be. It's like, leave people the heck alone. And whenever it is time to stand up for people, whether there is true racism or what have you, then we all stand up together and call it out and fight back against the injustice. But don't create an injustice just so you can stand up and be the hero. Come on now.
Exactly.
Well, in fact, they are creating injustices. J.K. Rowling. Look, I like Harry Potter. I'm not a huge fan of it. I like it. I mean, the movies are really well done for the most part, and she's an incredibly brilliant person who was basically living on public assistance and turned her life around, became almost a billionaire, if not a billionaire. But she was replying to a tweet from someone named Angie Jones, who lives in Melbourne, Australia. And she says, "There is self-identification in my city. Men are self-identifying into female sexual assault recovery services. If you say no, they take you to the Human Rights Tribunal. Women are self-excluding and not seeking this care. Groups are imploding. No more services for our most vulnerable women who are victims of sexual assault because it's nonsense." J.K. Rowling said exactly this. "The law Nicola Sturgeon's trying to pass in Scotland will harm the most vulnerable women in society, those seeking help after male violence, rape, and incarcerated women. Statistics show that imprisoned women are already far more likely to have been previously abused." That's a true statement. And they attacked her. Now, she also put another tweet out there where she poked fun at, she said, apparently under a Labour government in the UK, today will become We Who Must Not Be Named Day.
Right.
International Women's Day yesterday. That's hilarious.
Wow.
But she's right. And she just went on. She just said, she's not backing down. Lots of respect for J.K. Rowling. I don't really care for her new book, but I might just buy it so she makes some money, just out of respect. It's standing up to the bullies who are just out there. It reminds me of Blair White, who's the transgender conservative. Right. Who calls out all these fake transgenders and these people that just are men masquerading as women and not true transgenders. And they try to tear Blair White apart, but Blair White's a genuine transgender. And anyway, and of course, conservative, which really, that's like Milo Yiannopoulos. They just can't deal with Milo because he's openly gay,
Right. So they just have to destroy the guy,
Exactly. Oh, look how they went after Brandon Straka, and Rick Grinnell. Isn't it strange how the compassionate, caring leftists are the ones that attack homosexuals all the times?
Right. And Rick Grinnell, the first openly gay person to be appointed to a cabinet level position, but they conveniently glossed over that, ignored that. Completely.
We get the first, a female astronaut who wasn't the first black female astronaut, by the way. That's what they claimed a couple of years ago. Right. And then they tried the black female astronaut. She's the first African-American in space. There was an African-American that died in the Challenger explosion, in case you missed that in 1986, you morons. But, it's always the first dog catch, the first, Asian-American dog catcher in Paterson, New Jersey. Stop it already. Rick Grinnell was the first openly gay cabinet member. That's something that, if you want to celebrate first, should have been mentioned, and they just completely glossed over it. Never mind the fact that the politicians in Berlin assaulted him on a personal level on an almost daily basis when he was a representative in Berlin because he was conservative. Right. If he'd been a leftist, they would have had parades for him. Oh, look, an openly gay man. He's the ambassador. Ooh, America's so switched on.
Right. Yeah. And speaking of Pennsylvania, it's always sunny in Philadelphia. This past season, they kind of poke fun at the whole identity thing, the identity crisis. You got to identify as something. You got to identify as this, and if you identify the right thing, you can cancel other people and all this stuff. So they did a really good job poking fun of the woke culture that's out there in society. And these are guys that are obviously not the very conservative people. They're probably middle of the road or probably a little bit on the left side, but they're poking fun of how far things have gone from being, liberal, kind of that middle of the road type of, quasi common sense to just radically out of control. And if you don't agree with them today, they're going to cancel you. And of course, they're going to cancel you tomorrow if you don't go a little bit further to the left. That's the moving goalposts that they continue to set. But it's unbelievable that, and even Hollywood folks are now calling it out, which I'm glad to finally see it. But if you get a chance to watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia this past season, you'll kind of get a kick out of it, and it'll poke fun of it, and you'll see it in a light that most of us conservatives kind of see it in.
Well, South Park has become reality in their world.
Right. Yeah. and how many of the things that they've been talking about for decades, for 20 some odd years now, has become, like you said, reality. And even the Simpsons have poked fun of a lot of stuff over the years. And now all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, the Simpsons did that like 10, 15 years ago. And now we're seeing it out in society. It's crazy.
So I'm going to assume that you gents watched the State of the Union address. And so, it's the Lia moment broadcast, I call it. It's funny listening to Joe Biden. It wasn't then. It was actually yesterday, not the State of the Union address, but yesterday when he announced that we were finally, Joe has finally been forced into stopping imports of Russian oil and gas. 9 months after, I keep saying 9 months, it's 12 months. He did this in March of last year. 6 weeks after Biden took office as president, he saw Putin move 70,000 Russian troops to the Ukrainian border, and he did nothing. In fact, he did do something. He canceled the Keystone XL pipeline his first day in office. He banned ANWR drilling. He shut down leases in the Gulf of Mexico, which were restored by a court, then removed by a court. Anyway, he did. He's chastised the American industry. He's caused nervousness in the exploration. He shut down a lot of fracking, tight oil, and all this nonsense. He had the audacity to say, when he's shutting down the oil for Putin, that this is going to cripple Putin. Well, not for 45 days because existing contracts still have to be fulfilled and can be fulfilled. And meanwhile, the Russians are making $75, $84 million a day off the price of oil. And he's made $19 billion off that oil in the past year when he should have been making it. Should not have been making that money off that oil. And, Biden gets up there and he says, well, no, this is all a fairy tale. All these stories about how I've stopped the energy production in America. The oil companies are sitting on 9,000 leases. Okay, to tell the rubes out there that don't know anything about the energy industry how leases work for land on federal property, you bid on these things and you acquire these leases. So in the future, when you move on to that field, if you really think that the petroleum company is going to run out and drill in 9,000 different leases all over the country right now, that's disingenuous. It's a lie. And second, he said this. Well, it's untrue. In the first year of my presidency, the United States produced more oil than they did the first year of the Trump administration. Okay, that may be true, but that's not a relevant starting point. You have to look at the last year of the Trump administration, the first year of the Biden administration. Right. And even then, it's an unfair comparison because we had Rona. And so, the economy was dropping and oil consumption was down globally by about 10 million barrels per day. But even so, comparing and claiming that he's got more oil production when we have a larger economy with more consumption, more illegal aliens, more real Americans in the country than we had in 2017, it's just bogus. And you see how people throw truthful statements out there and turn it into a lie. It may be true that there's more oil pumped in 2021 under Biden's first year than there was in 2017 under Trump, but that's not germane. And the rubes, the sheeple out there, they just believe anything they're told. It's like the gentleman on the flight with me to Orlando. Counterpoint. Yeah, go ahead. So why shouldn't the government control misinformation? What's misinformation?
Yeah, right. Who decides that?
Yeah, well, Joe Biden is misinformation if you listen to his speech about Russian oil yesterday.
Well, of course, and of course, Jen circleback Psaki, she's now an energy expert, apparently.
Well, we call her Peppermint Patty now.
Right. And let me hit on a news thing since we talked about Madison Cawthorn a minute ago.
Yeah.
And they're trying to obviously change the law in North Carolina to get him out of his seat, if you will, or keep him from running for office. Apparently, he just got his third recent traffic offense, driving under a suspended license and speeding. So, and I guess they're kind of queuing in on him over there. I'm not sure. But third traffic offense. And of course, I guess in the last couple of months, he's got his driver's license suspended. So I guess they're probably going after him any way they can over there. I'm thinking.
Well, I guess they'll get Cawthorn like they got Al Capone. Got him on tax
Right.
evasion. They'll get Cawthorn out of office for speeding.
Yeah.
Nice.
He's outta here.
Anything they can get. Look, I mean, I don't know what's going on now. Hopefully he doesn't got a lead foot. Obviously, no pun intended there. Please don't misinterpret that. For those who don't know, Cawthorn is confined to a wheelchair after a traffic accident that paralyzed him. But so obviously he's got an assisted method to drive his vehicle. But that's the fact that makes news. I mean, by the way, I didn't hear that he was intoxicated. They didn't say that. He was just speeding.
Nope. And of course, like a lot of these politicians, you're drunk, high, and then with a hooker, and maybe one dead. Who knows? None of that. Obviously not a Mary Jo Kopechne where she's in the bottom of a sound, dead. And then this guy gets reelected talking about Ted Kennedy and gets named the Lion of the Senate and still gets to run for president, for crying out loud. And he gets put on a pedestal.
To be fair to Ted Kennedy, he was so drunk he didn't know where he was. Okay.
To be fair, right. Interesting.
He really didn't know where he was. So,
right? No, he did not. But somehow
he probably didn't remember she was in the car with him when it went into the creek.
He probably didn't.
Apparently, he didn't. He kind of walked away from it.
It's very possible that he came out of that, and then by the time he got to the shore, he realized she was in there, and he's like, I got to figure out how to get out of this. So he ran back to the house or walked back to the house, and then it got rowed across, according to the movie and all the stories. He got rowed across and went to his hotel and just hung out to the next day, So maybe so. Maybe he was just so drunk, and for the next couple hours he didn't know.
Could be, but all I know is that I feel much better tonight, gentlemen. I feel much more comfortable. Dr. Jill Biden has spoken. She spoke in an Intel facility, the chip manufacturing company there in Arizona. She said that Trump brought us 4 years of chaos, and she says that Joe is the right person for this moment in history. Okay, now look, I've been very upset with her. I thought that her husband, what was going on was elder abuse. The fact that she let him run for office, but apparently she's as deluded as he is. So maybe she needs some mental health counseling. The best person for this moment in time. What is she drinking?
Very likely. And we have our vice president, I'll do that in air quotes, is now in Poland. And she's out giving speeches to, adults as if they're children. And she's reading Thomas the Tank Engine. The little truck does this. And then Thomas does this. Choo, choo, choo. I'm like, come on, man. What, are you crazy? Have you guys seen those speeches?
No, I haven't.
Outrageous. So, yeah, she was giving a speech, I guess, in the last day or so, talking about, how the economy works, how things are moved around in the markets, and how, how we need renewable energies, how we need electrical cars and all this stuff, and how that all these renewable and, of course, electrical cars are the answers. And she was explaining how each thing works in society. The trucks do this to the market, bring in the milk and all of these stuff. I'm like, come on now, grow the heck up. You're talking to adults. Let's talk about facts and reality. Fossil fuels is the way to go right now. But yes, let's have an all the above solution and figure out how to get past fossil fuels, especially once they run out. But right now, that's the most reliable way of fueling our economy, if you will, of fueling our cars and our heating our homes and so forth. 80+ % of our energy comes from fossil fuels. Renewables are less than 20 some odd %, and that's a variety of different things right there. So to say that electrical thing or the sun or solar or the wind, that's the answer. I'm like, it's not the answer, because if it was, the markets would bear that out and we'd be moving more in that direction, and that's not the case right now.
It takes time to transition too.
Right.
They're not bridging the gap. They're just trying to jump right into it both feet first. And
right.
It's like that old meme, my boyfriend's upset with me. He says he's going to leave as soon as his car's done charging 16 hours from now. It's ridiculous.
16,
it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
But John, come on. I mean, Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden said a State of the Union, they're going to make 500,000 charging stations. Given that there's only 279 million motor vehicles in this country, that would only take us 6 months of waiting in line to charge our car behind everybody else.
Blackouts and brownouts don't mean nothing when it comes to charging your car, right? You might be a little late for work, folks.
So here's the other thing. If you run out of gasoline or diesel on the side of the road, it can be embarrassing, but at least you can take a can and get a ride with someone to a station and bring fuel back. When your battery runs dead on the interstate, you can't bring a spare battery out to replace it. It's the size of your entire trunk.
It's a AAA moment. You're getting a piggyback ride.
Definitely. AAA is going to make a fortune off of the electric car industry when it does happen. But listen, guys, I think we're being overly harsh of Kamala and of Joe, or Kamala, whatever the heck we're going by this week. But we're being overly harsh of Joe. I mean, Joe did tell us that Putin will never gain the hearts and souls of the Iranian people. Huh? The Iranian people?
Yeah.
Iranian.
He's
Well,
already
you know,
there.
he followed that up with earnage. He added a new word to the English dictionary, earnage. I don't know what earnage is. And he did talk about the devastating effects of climate change. Infects.
Yeah.
I thought that was the road of the devastating infects.
So I have a question. Has Washington Democrats decided that the coronavirus or the pandemic, scamdemic, whatever, is now over?
It's over?
I think so, because they just voted to move billions of dollars away from COVID funding to go to Ukraine now. So I guess it's over. No more masks, none of that, right? No more mandates.
Oh, no. It's live and well.
Wait a minute.
Congress, they were freaking out because the truck drivers weren't wearing masks when they spoke to Ted Cruz and Ron Johnson.
So wait a minute. You're bringing up something here I'm kind of curious about.
Yeah.
Because the truck drivers right now are in protest, and what they're protesting are the proclamations for the mandates for emergency powers, for the mandates. One, for federal employees must be mandated. That's still into effect. And two is the foreigners that travel into this country must either be vaccinated or tested before they can come into the country. Now, these mandates, from my calculations, were put in place last September. This proclamation for emergency powers. So they're due for review from the Judicial Committee, correct? Within 6 months after they were put into place. So right now, while truckers are protesting this, they're up for review. Where is Congress on this?
Right. Why haven't they repealed those? But they're going to move some money around now. So to me, that COVID's already over. If they're going to move the money away from COVID spending to go to Ukraine, right? I mean, if you're not going to spend it domestically, why are you going to push it overseas?
I guess Pfizer's is plenty rich now. They don't need the money for Pfizer, so they're moving it everywhere else.
Obviously, being a little facetious here. I'm just wondering, all of a sudden you can find the money and you don't want to spend it on COVID, but now you can push it overseas. I'm like, let's pick a lane here.
But as far as the jabs, the vaccine, and those things are falling like, I don't know, Humpty Dumpty off the wall here. That what you're talking about, John, that was struck down in January, late January, for federal employees is no longer required after, most of them have been jabbed. Also, the mandate against earlier in November against federal contractors was struck down. That was thrown out. Then against federal employees was thrown out in January. And now United Airlines has lost its court case in which it was accused of illegally compelling its employees by not making reasonable accommodation for religious exemptions and other things. They've lost that case. I haven't heard any more on it, but so these things are falling by the wayside everywhere. We also
wait a minute, was the federal employee thing, was that part of the 100 employees? Was it struck down at the same time for the federal court? Because I thought that was two different things.
That is two different things. This one's very different. Yeah. A Biden administration requirement that employees get vaccinated against COVID for federal workers was blocked by a federal judge in Texas in January 21st.
All right. I'm going to look that one up. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And the one you're talking about, the 100, that was struck down previously. So we forgot about that. You got first, the one to fall was the federal contractors. That was thrown out. And then the next one to fall was the 100 employees. That was thrown out. That's for the private sector. And now for federal employees, but that doesn't affect the military. So the military still falls under that, because they can get away with that. But these things are falling left and right. And we just saw that, which country? Oh, was it New Zealand? Yeah, New Zealand. Mr. Ed. Hello, I'm Jacinda Ardern. I'm Mr. Ed. Anyway, but in New Zealand, there was a court case there in which they mandated that the defense forces and the police services and all employees get jabbed. That has been declared unlawful by the High Court. And Jacinda Ardern has egg on her face after they've compelled people to get it. Now, again, this isn't a pro or anti-vax. This is just a anti-overreach of government. If vaccines work, then people will go get them. I mean, I have no problem with measles, mumps, rubella, yellow fever, typhoid, hepatitis A, B. I have no problem with those vaccines. And I've been pincushioned just like Todd for decades. Now, I didn't have a choice in some experimental vaccines that the government stuck in my arm when I was in the military. And in retrospect, I'm not so happy about that. But, it didn't have much of an impact on me. I'm going to talk about Iranians and Russia, No, but the stuff is falling apart everywhere. Meanwhile, they're still relying on these PCR tests, which, you got to question the validity of that. Now, let's do a counterfactual, gentlemen. Imagine if this had happened. Imagine it's February of 2022. And Donald Trump says, yeah, we've been told about this disease coming out of China. It's very dangerous. And we're going to ask that people, be careful about what you're doing, wash your hands, be safe and clean. If you feel ill, stay home. And if we went about our business, I wonder if we would have built up sufficient natural immunity that we wouldn't have had this crisis and people wouldn't be dying needlessly from cancer and type 2 diabetes, hypertension, high blood pressure, and things like that because they're not getting proper care in advance when they should be getting or during the course of their disease. And suicides and developmental problems for children and educational problems and collapses of businesses and demonization of people who are your neighbors because you're a psychotic lunatic who believes everything the government tells you and can't think for yourself. Imagine if we'd done that. Would people have died? Yeah. People die from influenza every year. People die from other diseases every year. West Nile virus, people die from. But we have seen the world descend to the chaos we've seen. I'm beginning to think that no, we wouldn't have. We would have had some people that passed away, mostly those who are vulnerable. We would have learned very quickly to isolate the vulnerable instead of doing what Phil Murphy in New Jersey, Governor Gropalot, Andrew Cuomo in New York, and Governor El Duce, Benito Mussolini, Tom Wolf here in Pennsylvania did by picking up people infected with COVID and sticking them into places where the most weakened immune systems on the planet are nursing homes, elderly people, killing grandma and grandpa off and our parents. And gosh, it would have been so different if people handled this in another fashion. But here we are. And finally, the sheep are waking up. And regular people have been fighting all along, been demonized, deplatformed, and treated as heretics are suddenly the people that were right all along. Isn't that interesting how all the things that were fake and you got censored and blocked and deplatformed for, suddenly they're the truth just because you asked the question.
It's like the memes. It's like, well, we're I'm blanking on the guy's name, but anyway, the meme, the guy shoots the guy behind him and he goes, why did you make me do, or why did you guys do that, or whatever. It's like Joe Biden. It's like trying to blame Putin for the gas prices. It's like, Joe Biden, the gas prices have been going up since day one of your administration.
Thank you very much. The price of gasoline was like $1.89 a gallon in Pennsylvania before he became president. Before this nonsense with Ukraine, the damn stuff was already $3.45, $3.60 a gallon here in Pennsylvania. And he's trying to blame the Russians for it. You are such – oh, boy, I tell you what, the FCC would get mad at me if I finish that sentence. I will not finish that sentence.
But there's many things we can blame Putin over, but the gas prices, not so much all of a sudden. And then, of course, he just yesterday, just got on the bandwagon to ban Russian oil, but won't allow, a drilling here, won't allow the Keystone Pipeline, won't allow us to actually go out and find our own own oil and process that and try to be energy independent. He said that that's not the answer. Electrical cars is somehow the answer. But how are you going to charge them without fossil fuels to create the power? Come on now.
Charge them. See, this is the thing that really irritates me about this stuff. Hey, folks, you're listening to the Common Sense Conservatives on WSMN, 1590 AM and 95.3 FM. You can also watch us if you want to see our beautiful faces on the Facebook and YouTube when we're not censored on there, broadcasting simultaneously where you can see us rather than just listen to WSMN. If you're somewhere around the world and you just want to listen to the station, you're probably already doing it, because you can go to wsmn.live. But the thing that really irritates me about this, gents, is that these environmental wackos, because that's what they are. They're just clueless clowns who know nothing about what they're talking about. They make the stupidest decisions to keep. They closed the Keystone XL pipeline. First off, Barack Obama fraudulently used the Department of State to do a national security study, an impact study about how dangerous it is for oil to come from Canada. Yeah, the Canadians are very dangerous. The government, that is, not Canadian citizens, but and tied it up for years. And despite that, the Department of State study said there's virtually no impact here, and it's not a national security issue, and the pipeline should go ahead. And he still slow rolled. It didn't happen. Trump comes in, he greens lights it. We keep going. Now the Biden administration is lying, saying the Canadians aren't ready. The Canadian pipeline has been built to the border. It is done. It is there. Stop lying about that. And instead, this is what the Greens want to do. They want us to be cold, hungry, starving, unemployed, while the rest of the world rises and the rest of the world pollutes. But we can't pollute. Now, I'm not suggesting we should pollute, but this is their alternative. If oil is over $70 a barrel, which it currently is at about $120, $130, $140 a barrel, depending on what time of day it was today. When oil is over $70 a barrel, the oil sands in Alberta become economically viable. You can make money off a barrel of oil over $70 because it takes a lot to extract that stuff. Well, if you extract it, you put it in pipelines, you let it mostly gravity flow from Canada down to the Gulf states in Louisiana, Texas, to refineries that are well suited to refine it. You create jobs. and you keep those refineries operating at full strength in the Gulf states, you create jobs in Canada. Oh, by the way, in case you're not aware of it, folks, not my co-host here, but oil sands are pollution. It's nature's pollution. It's puking up oil tar into the sands, polluting the environment. So digging it up is a way to clean up the environment. Now, that sounds counterintuitive, but anyway, regardless. So their solution is that we can't have the oil. Okay, great. So if it's always over $70 a barrel, there are people that want the oil. So guess where it's going to go? Loaded into tankers, driven over highways on black ice, road, sleet, snow conditions, through the Rocky Mountains, sensitive environmental area, driven to British Columbia, down to Vancouver, loaded in super tankers that go through very narrow sounds out into the Pacific, across the Pacific, burning kerosene and other polluting fuels. One of the worst polluters are these ships, and it gets to China in these refineries that don't clean the stuff. So how much carbon was saved? How much carbon is saved by us buying oil that's dug up in the Caspian Sea and put into pipelines and then put on ships and brought from the Black Sea through the Dardanelles and Bosporus, through the Mediterranean, all these very narrow places, and across the Atlantic so that we can use it in America, and where we can get it right here. And, it's just these people are idiots. Their approach to this is moronic. They're producing more pollution, more carbon dioxide, more danger to the environment by forcing us to buy oil from Iran, from Venezuela, which is poor quality, by the way, and from Russia when it's right here at home. And we're sending all of our hard-earned currency to foreign governments, fascist theocracies, totalitarian dictators. These people are just nut jobs.
No, I agree with you 1,000%. Now, let me bring up something here to kind of shift gears, if you will. The Hill's reporting, and we've talked about this before, and of course, a recent guest on our show, running for governor of Michigan, the trial for the men accused of plotting Whitmer kidnapping has opened. The trial for the men accused of plotting kidnap a Michigan governor in 2020 began on Wednesday. It says the prosecutors began their argument saying they will show in detail how, and of course, it lists the defendants to accomplish what they would shoot, blow up, and kill anybody who got in their way, in their own words, creating a war zone here in Michigan. Prosecutors said in the opening statement. And it says, but it doesn't mention anything about all the FBI and law enforcement agents that were involved in this as well. But a few of the people that were kind of recruited by informants are now put on trial here. So I'm like, I don't know if this was kind of organic or were these guys basically, I don't know, enticed to do this by law enforcement. I'm not sure. Hopefully that'll come out in that trial, but it started, I guess, today or yesterday.
Now, there's other news reports out about that story, which are honest about it, and they report exactly that. The defense team is saying that these guys were hoodwinked into doing it.
Right.
Bottom line is they tried to do it, so they're guilty of crimes.
Sure.
We're not trying to excuse that. But the point is here, just like events on other things, like January 6th, maybe, there were government actors who, and just like in the 60s, when they infiltrated civil rights groups and tried to lead civil rights groups to violence, tried to get them involved in violence, the government precipitated and led to this. It was a setup. And the thing is, you've got to be careful. It's like, if you're online and people start catfishing, you got to be very careful, and hey, I don't want to talk to you. I suspect you're probably a minor. Yeah, you're right. Just keep walking. And it's actually a federal agent or something like that. You got to be careful. I mean, you can't let your emotions get the best of you and be hoodwinked into doing something that goes against your best judgment, particularly if it's criminal. And no one should be involved in criminal activities, but the government should not be out there trying to get people to commit criminal acts.
Right. I thought that was entrapment within itself.
Entrapment. That's what I was looking for.
Well, it depends on the circumstances and whether you can convince a jury. That's the bottom line on this.
That is it right there. It's a matter of, who has the best argument in a court of law.
These guys were clearly, I don't want to say they're entrapped, but they were certainly driven to do this and encouraged to do this by federal actors, by government actors who wanted this. They wanted this story. They make her out to be some big victim. She is a fascist, totalitarian dictator who circumvents the rule of law and gets away with it because she's a woman and she's in Michigan, and the left loves that. And anyway, but she mostly gets away with it because she's a leftist. I mean, whether she's a woman or a man or a dog or a horse or a tree, she'd get away with it as long as she was a leftist. That's the bottom line. Now, it's quite frightening. It's quite frightening what goes on here. But the same thing happened in South Africa. We had a group down there in South Africa called the Boermag, which is a extreme right-wing group of white racist, but they were virtually non-existent. Just, a dozen or so of these clowns. And they had designs on trying to overthrow the government. I'm going to tell you, if you have 12 people to overthrow a government, unless you live in a tin pot African country, which South Africa was at the time, you're not going to get very far. You sort of need support. And, they what happened is the government infiltrated. They got people in the group, and they were the rabble rousers. They pushed it. It's kind of like that movie that Tommy Lee Jones was in back in, he played the guy that did this. He was an operative, and who was in that movie with Gene Hackman? I can't remember. They played it. Yeah. What was that movie called? Back in the 1980s. And they were in the Berlin Brigade, and it was all about killing the Russian president. The state was involved in this. They're the ones that was facilitating all this stuff. And that's not the purpose of our state. I mean, I don't have a problem with government actors infiltrating extremist groups, but in infiltrating extremist groups to encourage them or precipitate violent action on their part, that's not the role of the government.
A criminal investigation is one thing, but when you're inciting it out of them. And it's funny you bring it up, because I've seen videos from down there in Hagerstown where the truck drivers are dealing with the same sort of things. They're literally calling people out saying, look, you don't belong here. We know who you are. We know what you're doing. Get out of our group. And they literally will kick them out of their group. Because they're aware of these sorts of things. It's incredible the sort of things that go on, the type of tactics that go on and within our own government. My wife's reading me a story today about the squad. Members of the squad actually hire security. Now I'm not quite clear if it's government paid security or if they're paying out of pocket, but if you have to hire security as a representative in the United States Congress, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, guaranteed it's not out of their own pocket. That's for sure. It's either campaign dollars or somebody else is funding it, or our tax dollars. Very likely it's probably the ones funding it. So just be clear on that. Yeah. Oh, on a good conservative note, on a global scale, Yoon Suk Yeol, I probably mispronounced that, South Korean conservative, wins the presidency over there, which I think is great.
This is a very, very close race, wasn't it?
It was very close, very tight, and it's one of the closest, I think, since it said 87 or something like that. So, 30 some odd years. Great news for conservatism on a global scale.
Well, this is good because South Korea's president was a bit of a wacko,
a little bit, right? A little bit.
So it's probably good. That movie was The Package with Gene Hackman and Tommy Lee Jones.
There you go. Yeah.
Actually, a pretty good movie, but it was a whole setup. The government are the ones that pushed for this to happen. They took some radical fringe actors and encouraged them and gave them the means to do evil things just to set them up as the patsies. So, that's not something our government should be engaged in. It's just I think morally wrong. It's got to be legally wrong too, but certainly it's morally wrong. But it's a crazy world we live in, gents, and it's getting crazier by the day. Hopefully some of these candidates that are standing for office will prove to be genuine, true constitutional conservatives and do the right thing when they get in office and change the trajectory, because it's pretty frightening. Did you see that the emergency package, the vote was 48 to 47. You had 5 senators that didn't bother to vote, and it passed. But it's not a snowball's chance in an HE double hockey sticks. That thing is going to actually be approved by the House, which is run by the Democrats. And then even if it was, Biden is never going to sign it to end the state of emergency. He just extended it.
No,
he did just extend. No,
yeah, he did for another year. He just did. That's part of the reason why the truckers are upset. That's one of the main reasons. And see, you're talking about the truckers. First off, I should be very clear about,
I interviewed about COVID emergencies. He put that into effect September of last year. And it's good for 1 year until it expires.
No, Trump declared a national emergency in March of 2020 or February 2020. Excuse me. And it was extended 2021 by Biden after he became president. He's just extended for another year. But this is after he took a victory lap and claimed that he's the one responsible for ending COVID, So it's just from the year. So there was a vote in the Senate to strike that down with a law, get rid of it, And so 48 senators voted to strike it down. 47 voted not to. It was on party lines. 48 Republicans for 47 Democrats against 5 senators didn't vote. So it passed. It goes to the House now, but there's not a chance. I seriously doubt. And even if it does pass the House, it'll go to Biden, who just signed it. So he's not going to sign this thing. And so we're stuck with this thing unless, he has some sort of epiphany, which isn't going to happen. But, so let me just talk very quickly, John, about the trucking thing. There's a misnomer here. The People's Convoy that's in Hagerstown, Pennsylvania, is not a truckers thing. Truckers are the inspiration behind it. And it was motivated by what happened in Canada, among other things. And there were organizers who helped the Canada rally, who are also part of this, a number of organizers involved in this. But people should understand that if you go to the Capitol Beltway and you see these guys driving around in one of the lanes, it's not just the trucks, it's all the cars and the individual civilians and citizens out there who are part of it. I watched a 4-minute clip of a live stream from one of the truckers who pulled his rig off the side of the road on the Beltway, headed down there from Frederick on Monday. And I watched as it went down. 4 minutes. I counted 128 semis in those 4 minutes and over 400 plus cars and trucks and RVs and campers. They're waving flags and banners. They were all part of it. They're the convoy. The truckers are just part of it. They're not.
Yep.
So we need to make sure that that's clear. It's a people's convoy. It involves truckers. Truckers are a big part of it. They're the lifeblood, the heart and soul of it, but they're not the only people. And also people need to understand that this thing started in California, came all the way across the country, largely without incident of any sort. And it's in Hagerstown now. And I interviewed Brian this evening, one of the organizers of it, who met with Ted Cruz and Ron Johnson yesterday at Congress, at the Capitol building. And they're not going anywhere, at least not for the foreseeable future. They intend to continue driving around the Beltway, and they want action. They want to see accountability for what's happened the last 2 years. They want to see the emergency rescinded. And I think they got an uphill battle, especially with the media not covering them at all, or not covering them honestly.
Cruz told him that. Cruz pretty much told him that they had during the meeting. He told him he's basically going to Cruz and Johnson. Okay, Ron Johnson from Wisconsin.
Right.
Cruz pretty much told him, look, you're preaching to the choir here. We agree with you, And he told him that there's a process, and the process is huge, and you pretty much got to get both the Senate and the House to move on it. And he didn't mean it to be discouraging, but it's truthful. Like Chris was saying, it passes the Senate, but the House is a terrible thing, a terrible hurdle to cross in these regards.
But even if 10 or 5 or so or 8 Democrats cross the aisle and vote, and so the House also approves it, it goes to Joe Biden. He's not going to sign a piece of legislation that contradicts what he just approved.
Then you got the supermajority vote that can possibly override him. But that's there again.
No,
I mean, that's fairy
You're not
tales.
going to overturn his veto. You need 2/3 for that. You're not going to overturn a veto. So that's not realistic. The only realistic thing here is that Joe Biden has a change of heart, or the polls get so far against him, he does it just in desperation. Or November happens and there's a red tsunami, and the pressure is just too great. That's the only options here. Now they mean well, the folks down there, and as I said, I did this interview earlier today. It's already posted up on my social media accounts, and so people can go check that out if they want. But I think it's a very interesting, enlightening video as we talk about what's taking place and what's going to happen. And one of my big questions is, what's next? What are you guys going to do? Because some of the other organizers have pretty much felt they'd achieved what they'd hoped to achieve by drawing attention and successfully getting this convoy across the country, and so they pulled out. But others are still there. And some people might go to Hagerstown and go, oh, there's hardly any trucks here, or there's not many trucks as there were last Friday. But yeah, that's kind of expectation by design. But they're gonna be camped out there west of Hagerstown, and they're gonna, I guess, go out when the weather permitting and hit the road and drive every day. It's a lot of stupid comments on social media about this event that are completely off the mark. What are you doing? The mandates are over. No, they're not over. And the proof of that was they go to the Capitol building and they're not wearing masks. They're not wearing masks. If it's over, then why are you even talking about that? And also it wasn't just about that. It's about government overreach. It's about the government exceeding its constitutional authority and no one pushing back. Well, the People's Convoy is pushing back. Will they be successful? I'm not going to hold my breath, but I certainly hope that they have some success.
I would hope so as well. And of course, sadly, the success of Ukrainians getting the MiGs from Poland has been blocked by the U.S. Now that our vice president, in air quotes there, is in Poland right now. So that's been shot down. What are your thoughts on that one, Colonel? I want to get your take on that one.
Well, I don't know if we'll agree on this one, but let me just, so first off, I produced a video about this yesterday. I was so incensed about it so into it that I finished at 2:30 in the morning when I finished editing and putting it up. But so on 2 successive days, 2 countries made the bigwigs look like fools. On Monday, Zelensky removed Putin's casus belli, his excuse for the war. First, he said, I'm willing to compromise on the sovereignty of the Luhansk and Donetsk in the Donbass. Okay, that was the big reason why he went to war. The Russian minority there. Well, it's a majority in that region, but minority in Ukraine. And the other, he said, look, I'm no longer interested in Ukraine becoming part of NATO. They obviously don't care. They're afraid of Russia. They're not willing to help us. And so those are the two big reasons. The only other thing left is the denazification of the Ukraine. So I'm not sure what that means, unless it means the liquidation of the Azov battalion. But anyway, so he made Putin look like an idiot, and his strategic communications are brilliant. And a lot of analysts are missing this. You go on to Fox and MSNBC and CNN, you listen to these people, none of them are talking about this. They should have picked on the fact that Zelensky has become a master communicator. Even if he's not, he looks that way. Certainly when you put him up against Putin and Biden, of course, that's a low bar or a high bar to get under. It's not difficult. You don't have to limit that very far.
No.
So that's then yesterday. Now, this is the issue I have with this. You want to answer your question specifically about the aircraft. I mentioned that because they're kind of tied together. So the aircraft, over a week ago, the Biden administration let it be known publicly. Whether it was intentional or it was leaked, I don't know. But they're like, hey, we're spitballing the idea of getting the Poles to give their aircraft. They didn't say MiG-29s, but they said their fighter aircraft to the Ukraine, and we're going to backfill them with F-16s. They let that story float, and then when it started getting traction, suddenly they realized, oh, man, we probably can't do this. Now, why would they do that? Because they wanted to be seen doing something that they cared. It was empty virtue saying they had no intention whatsoever to do this, because they know doing so is likely to make the U.S. and or Poland a co-belligerent in the conflict because of what they're doing. It's like the stupidity of Anthony Blinken telling NATO countries you can use your bases for Ukrainian. What? That if you allow Ukrainian aircraft to land at your base in Poland or Romania, you are a co-belligerent. And when you get attacked with surface-to-ground and surface-to-surface missiles by the Russians, you have no one to complain to. And when you try to invoke Article 5, I don't know if it's applicable. You started the war. You got to be careful there. So of NATO's charter. So they had no intention of ever giving these aircraft to Poland. Why was it in the public? This is why Julian Assange is an idiot and the WikiLeaks are morons, because states are entitled to secrets. You're entitled to have a secret. How do you negotiate if people know your gameplay? Well, this was an intentional release of the information so that the Biden administration looks strong when they're actually weak, like they were doing something, but they had no intention. And the proof of the pudding is this: the Poles called them on it. And people the leftist media are criticizing the Poles. No. The Poles were smart. They ended this whole discussion and made themselves look brilliant and made Biden and the Department of Defense look like the idiots that they are, and the Department of State. And this is how they did it. So we start to see the Biden administration pull back. Well, giving them F-16s, we can only give F-16s that aren't the most advanced F-16s. We don't have any of those currently available for export. So we'd have to give you ones that we're using in our Air Force. And that seems problematic. How do we do that? Send our pilots, what do we do? So they kind of backed away. Well, Poland didn't want to pussyfoot and play this game anymore. So they said, you know what? Hey, we have decided we're going to send all 28 of our MiG-29s to Ramstein Air Base and transfer control to the U.S. forces at Ramstein. Then they can fly them to the Ukraine.
Yeah, I love it. So they put them on the spot, and of course called their bluff. I love it.
They called their bluff. They called Zelensky called Putin's bluff. So Putin is a lying sack of whatever, because the two things that were the main reasons for coming in don't exist anymore. So the war should stop right now if that's what he wanted. That's not what he wanted. He wanted Ukrainian territory, at least up to the Dnieper River. So he made them look like a fool, and he proved it was just an act of aggression. And on Tuesday, the Polish government made Biden and NATO, they're a NATO member, they made NATO look foolish. They were never going to do this. This is what happens when juveniles and idiots run our foreign policy.
Right, absolutely. And you have a lot of politicians or people that just want to be in positions, especially in our Defense Department, instead of people that are going to actually stand up and give the right advice and the right, right guidance to the president as commander in chief, instead of just wanting to keep their jobs. And so that's another part of that, I think, played into it.
Well, another piece of this too, which nobody's ever talking about. I there might be someone talking about. I'm sure I missed it. I mean, people talk about lots of places, but I've missed it, and that is that there are a lot of Biden administration officials in all the departments who suddenly are talking all the time. They're all over shuttle diplomacy, and they're looking all big. And what's coming here? This is their talk shows after their time in government. This is their big consulting, their big board membership, their book deals. It's all about that. It's not about what's right and wrong. It's not about avoiding a war with a nuclear armed nation. 10,000 warheads on intercontinental ballistic missiles and sea-launched ballistic missiles, and they keep missing that. Unbelievable. And meanwhile, our press is propping up Ukraine as if they're blameless, and they're violating the Geneva Convention by taking prisoners, Russian prisoners of war. I hear somebody's outside. It's outside the studio. Boy, that was loud.
Wow.
I thought it was black helicopters coming after me. When I just want to make sure.
Get you.
Yeah, but hey, they come here all the time. They fly low over my house. They're not black helicopters, though. They're just National Guard. But anyway, I lost track where I was going there, guys. Sorry, that's a senior moment in effect there.
Yeah, no, but
a moment at least.
Yeah, I can kind of see where you're going with this, and what we need to do, especially in Congress, is elect a lot of people who have the background in say national security, homeland security, things like that. A lot of veterans, especially, and of course, a lot of our police, fire, and EMS types, kind of the working class, if you will, not politicians, not people who played the game, if you will, and not people who just go out and buy the seat. We need real people from America, kind of the grassroots, middle America in Washington, D.C., making comments as decisions versus, just somebody who's kind of like the choice of the establishment elite, if you will, the upper crust, making all these decisions because they really don't care about the working class people. They don't really care about the people that's going to have to go fight these wars. For them, it's about the power and control in the hands of the few. Whether it's Democrats or Republicans, it's kind of all the same, like the Colonel's always said, the uniparty.
Well, and let me add something here. There's a comment in one of the social media sites here as we're here on the radio. It's interesting. We can bring social media comments in. We're almost like CNN. Look at what John and Toledo said, But someone said, are you saying governments are entitled to secrets and spy on their own citizens? I didn't say that. I didn't even remotely say that. I said government's entitled to their own secrets. They are. Businesses are entitled to their own secrets. Yep. You're entitled to your own secrets. I mean, let's be honest. If you're a dude, and you walk down the street, you see an attractive person of the opposite sex, and you're heterosexual, do you want your spouse or significant other to know every thought that goes through your head? Don't lie. Don't lie. You're entitled to your secrets. You don't have to. It doesn't mean you're going to act on it, but you don't want people to know what you're thinking. And sometimes your spouse irritates you. Probably think some evil thoughts about your spouse. Now, if everyone's not entitled to secrets, then your spouse know everything you think. That isn't right. That's not good. That would lead to social chaos. Now, I've never said that the government's entitled to spy on their own citizens. In fact, I've railed endlessly against the violation of the Patriot Act, the violation of the Constitution, and the abuse of government agencies, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation, against citizens, spying on Carter Page, spying on candidate Trump, on President Trump, on Michael Flynn, on Roger Stone, on all these people. Fruit of the poisonous trees. These were criminal uses and abuses of government resources to illegitimately spy. Now, governments can spy on people with a warrant, with a legitimate basis. Having been a counterintelligence agent in the U.S. government for the U.S. Army, there are times that we have to surreptitiously spy on people who are suspected of espionage. We should have the right to do that, but we must prove that to a reasonable degree to a court. That system worked. After the church hearings in the 1970s, that system worked until Barack Hussein Obama became president. And then it was abused, and it was used against political enemies, just like Lois Lerner and the Internal Revenue Service was used against the Tea Party and other groups criminally. Is she in jail? She's never even been charged with a crime. This is ridiculous. The state acted against its citizens. I never implied that. If someone infers that, you're not listening very clearly to me. But governments, corporations, individuals are entitled to secrets. And if you don't agree with that, I suggest you get on a cruise ship with Julian Assange and cruise around the Caribbean and have a good time until you run out of gas.
Yep. And I've had a security clearance since I was 18 and a TSSCI Yankee White presidential level access for a number of those years. And, having dealt with a lot of different intel and president's daily briefing, things like that, and being in a lot of rooms with a lot of these intel briefings and stuff, there's things that people's lives are on the line. People, the government needs those secrets. Obviously, the military, our homeland security and so forth to protect people's lives. You need to keep things a secret, especially people that are going out and collecting intel overseas. Our various agents, and of course, people that we've actually recruited in all these countries. We don't need people to know who those people are because they would be killed. And of course, be able to gather intel on Iran or Iraq or whoever. All of a sudden that's gone. So obviously, like you just said, we need secrets, and we are entitled to those secrets. And we don't want our government to abuse that, though, and spy on us, the American citizens, especially without good due cause and without due process, and of course a warrant, like you said. So I agree.
Well, if the government wanted to keep it a secret, they ought to keep it off the internet.
Yeah, the internet.
Well, I mean, it's probably also not a good idea to say that there will be no U.S. boots on the ground in Ukraine. Okay, great. Green light, boys. Let's cross the border now.
Right.
Come on. And then this stupidity of, we're negotiating with the Poles, so they'll send their jet. Wait, why is that even in the media? This is just ridiculous. This is nonsense. These are corrupt officials who are like children. They have absolutely no idea. And look, I'm not shy about saying this. Somebody prove me wrong. Show me something strategically without the fake stream media telling some bogus narrative. Show me the truth of how the Biden administration has done anything to prevent a conflict. Whoa, we're all about negotiation. Really? You started meeting in January. They put troops there in March of last year, 6 weeks after he came. And let me just run through the list of things. Joe Biden becomes president late January of 2021. Days later, on the 1st of February 2021, the military government, or the junta, overthrows the legitimately elected government. It's corrupt, but it's legitimately elected in Myanmar. What does Biden do? Nothing. Coups twice in Mali. He does nothing. We withdraw from Mali. That's what we do. Coup in Burkina Faso. Does nothing. The first Arab president ever in the history of Niger is elected, and he's nearly assassinated the week before he's inaugurated. What do we do? Nothing. Sudan has a coup in November. What do we do? Nothing. The list is endless. One thing after another, this government has done nothing. This foreign policy is something that a 6-year-old could formulate that's more effective than these clowns in the State Department who are running it and in the White House and National Security Council. Case closed.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I'm glad he didn't harken back to the old Biden administration where he kept drawing red lines and kept backing up, drawing another red line, another red line. I'm glad he's not doing that at least.
Yeah, but I mean,
for what it's worth.
I mean, this is dangerous. I mean, not only is it dangerous for 44 million Ukrainians and for thousands of Russian soldiers thrown in something they didn't ask to be part of, but it's also dangerous for the world. I mean, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is the largest in Europe with 6 reactors. Only one's working right now. And it's the 9th largest in the world. It could have been blown up and, fallout all over the planet. And then we've got Chernobyl, the whole mess in Chernobyl. People freaking out today because the power was cut. And then the International Atomic Energy said, "Oh no, it's okay. It's okay. They've cooled down enough. The rods are okay." I mean, I don't even trust them anymore. That's the same organization Hans Blix was an inspector for. Hans Blix told us that the Iraqis had weapons of mass destruction. Then he conveniently said, "No, they don't," after we invaded. And then everyone blames Bush for it. Well, Bush deserves blame, but you all forget that the UN said they had weapons. Hans Blix said that. And he contradicted himself after the offensive was underway. You lying sack. Anyway.
Absolutely. And a place we shouldn't have been in, especially in 2003. We should have finished Afghanistan the right way and moved on from that point. Not look for trouble everywhere underneath every rock. Just because Saddam tried to kill your dad. Come on.
How about we not have a Congress that allocates $100 billion over 20 years to build an American-like army in a medieval country, which only needs AK-47s and mortar rounds, not helicopters and Super Tucano fighters and, advanced intelligence and Black Hawk helicopters. Congress gave this. By the way, I need to dispel a rumor for a lot of people out there. We didn't leave our military equipment in Afghanistan. That equipment doesn't belong to us. We gave it or sold it through security assistance to the Afghan government because Congress ordered it. They're the ones responsible, not the U.S. military and not the average American citizen. I think we're going to run out of time here in a moment.
And I agree with you. And that's absolutely 100%. But everybody's running for re-election. They especially the Republicans jump on that and try to blame Biden for giving away or losing our equipment. It's like it wasn't our equipment to begin. Well, it was to begin with. But at that point, it was no longer ours.
It wasn't ours to lose. It didn't belong to us. And also, we weren't in a war in Afghanistan. The war ended 13 months prior. The last combat casualty, we had about 4,500 security assistance troops training Afghans, and we had a small special operation going on to protect our forces and respond to threats to them. We were not in a war. That's a lie. Biden lied. People died. Biden lied, people died. Now we've been flooded with 150,000 unvetted Afghans, some of which are legitimate, but most of them are just people that escaped and have no business being here. And we're going to have to deal with that for generations to come.
Big time. Yeah, big time. John.
See you next week, ladies and gentlemen, right here on the Common Sense Conservatives, WSMN, 1590 AM, 95.3 on your dial. Cheers.
WSMN 1590, WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Listen, watch, and stream at WSMN.